If you still own your Pokemon Sword and Shield video games and play Scarlet and Violet, make sure you stick around because you do not want to miss this very handy trick to power up your Pokemon faster than ever. More specifically, today we will discuss the fastest way to EV and IV train in Sword and Shield. With Pokemon Home compatibility allowing trainers to finally transfer Pokemon between games, there are quite a few Pokemon that can be moved between these two generations. And with how challenging some things are in Scarlet and Violet, such as unbalanced raid and overworld item spawn rates, EV and IV training in Sword and Shield is a perfect alternative to save you time and in-game items. What's up, y'all?
Mr. Dr. Professor
Titan here, back with another video to help you enhance your Pokemon adventure. Of course, as mentioned, we'll be discussing today how to transfer back Pokemon to Sword and Shield from Scarlet and Violet so that you can take full advantage of EV and IV training those Pokemon quicker and with less in-game items than if you were to do it in Scarlet and Violet. We'll kick things off by first showing a super easy way to check and reset your EVs in Pokemon Sword and Shield. This is not currently something that's in the Scarlet and Violet video games. Then, we'll dive into the fastest and most efficient method for EV and IV training. And finally, to wrap everything up, I'll guide you through the entire step-by-step process, including how long it took me and the amount of Pokecoins I spent to max out an EV and IV trained Pokemon. You can decide if this method works best for you. Also, real quick, to make the most of this video, I am assuming that you have beaten Sword and Shield along with the DLC for either of the games. I also am assuming that you do know the basics of EV and IV training. If not, I recommend going doing some of your own research and then coming back here so you can make the most of this vid. And if you don't mind, leaving a like on the video, subscribing to the channel. I release new Pokemon videos every week, including Pokemon videos to help you out, along with some awesome video game and TCG unboxing content. Alright, now let's get after it. First, we're going to discuss the super easy way to check and reset EVs in Sword and Shield. This is not something that you can currently do in Scarlet and Violet, so I definitely think this is a major plus for Sword and Shield if ever needed when EV and IV training. In my other video that discusses the fastest way to EV and IV train in Scarlet and Violet, I touch upon the different berries found around the map to reduce the EVs of your Pokemon. But for Sword and Shield, it's way easier. First, you want to fly to the Fields of Honor on the Isle of Armor, and then travel straight down from there to the beach where the giant overworld whale lord spawns. Then, just ride your bike to this little island, and the NPC there will fully reset your Pokemon's EVs for 10 Armorite ore. If your Pokemon does not need to be reset, they will just tell you that the Pokemon is already, quote, a blank slate. If not, this process only takes a few seconds, and then you're all set to EV and IV train. Now that we have fully wiped our stats if need be, let's discuss the fastest plan of action for EV and IV training in Sword and Shield. First, I like to favorite any items I'll be using multiple of for the process, so feel free to do so with whatever items you find most valuable. And with this, I always recommend you add the Pokemon you were training as the first Pokemon in your party, so that it's selected by default when choosing the proper items. From there, the next step is to fly to the Isle of Armor and enter the dojo. Once you give Honey over 400,000 watts, he'll set up a vending machine with all the vitamins necessary for EV training. Just purchase the necessary vitamins to max out your Pokemon, and then we can move on to the next step of ensuring we have feathers, which is the other item needed for maxing out EV stats. If you need more feathers, the best way to find them is to travel to the Motostoke outskirts or Route 5, and just remember they are overworld items on the bridges specifically. Once we have the items needed for our EVs, we then want to acquire a ton of bottle caps, which are used to max out our Pokemon's IVs. If needed, both gold bottle caps and regular bottle caps can be acquired via raids, but I found that battling in the battle tower is pretty easy in Sword and Shield, so just use battle points if you have them to purchase bottle caps from the battle tower. Once you have the necessary bottle caps, just fly to the battle tower and this NPC will hyper train your Pokemon, which just means he'll max out your Pokemon's IVs. Whether you use a gold bottle cap or regular bottle caps is up to you, but I highly recommend only using gold bottle caps if you need to increase at least 4 IVs so that you use the least amount of bottle caps possible. And now the grand finale, let's put everything together and see how fast we can EV and IV train a Pokemon. I'm gonna max out my shiny Talonflame as it's widely used in competitive Pokemon battles, along with just being a super awesome Pokemon. After I ensured the stats were reset, I flew to the Isle of Armor and entered the dojo. I want to max out both the attack and speed stats of Talonflame, and then add 4 EVs with special defense to fully max it out. I purchased 25 proteins for attack and 25 carbos for speed, and once those were purchased, I focused on one stat at a time so that I do not get confused, and I maxed out my attack with 25 proteins and 2 muscle feathers, and then 25 carbos and 2 swift feathers to max out its speed. Finally, I added 4 clever feathers to increase its special defense, and then flew to the battle tower to max out its IVs. When entering the battle tower, I went up to the proper NPC, and Talonflame needed to max out 5 of its stats. Since that is more than 3, I used 1 gold bottle cap, and just like that, I have a fully EV and IV trained Talonflame ready to be transferred back into Scarlet and Violet. Overall, I spent 250,000 Poké Dollars, and from the time I flew to the Isle of Armor to finishing up the hyper training, it took me less than 2.5 minutes. That is definitely way faster and way cheaper than the easiest and fastest way to EV and IV train in Scarlet and Violet.